Eyes down for Good morning, folks. Tuesday, bank holiday yesterday, and I couldn't come into play because it was my mother-in-law's 75th birthday, so we had a bit of a party. So I've taken the tank off to start on the steering box. Doesn't it look naked with the tank off? Anyway, there's the steering box. Next job is getting that huge link arm off, and then we can repair the steering box. So I'm going to get stuck into this, get it unbolted. Well, I'll take that arm off first, then I'll get it unbolted, and we'll have it on the bench, I think. It looks like it's been, somebody's had a go at stripping it. Oh no, it's just the paint that's horrible. Right, okay, I don't think I've ever had this off before. Maybe I've done. Maybe I've taken it off myself before, but it does free off the control box, so I'll be able to take that off, and I might even unclip the wiring harness. That's going to be the easiest way to get that off, I think, is just unclip the wiring harness and take that off, because I've got to take that. I've got to strip this down to get the old temperature gauge out, to put the new temperature gauge in, and while it's off I can paint it, so it can be done off the tractor rather than have to fiddly mask it all up. Right, so that's what I'll do with that. Right, I'm going to crack on and get that bloody arm unbolted. I think this might be challenging. It might be challenging. Let's have a go and find out. That's a big nut. Okay, chaps. See you in a bit. Bye now. Well, there you go. The nut was loose and it slid straight off the spline. Probably because it's been leaking so much bloody oil. So I shall carry on getting these bolts out and get it unbolted and lifted off, and we'll have a wash down and a pressure wash, I think. Right, see you in a minute. Right folks, steering box off is 2 bolts under there, 2 bolts at this end, and 2 bolts there. So I'm now just going to pop a lever under it, and I hope that it just pops off. So I'll bring you back when it's off and on the floor. Bye now. Did I say 2 bolts? I meant 3. Right, 3 bolts at the back, at the front, 2 bolts at the back. Okay, bye now. This is a voyage of discovery, people. There is actually no metal underneath the steering box, so that will need a gasket on when it goes back on. So the first thing you do with a thing like this is you stuff a rag in it so that you don't drop any tools, nuts, bolts, etc. down the bloody hole, because if you do, it's all going to come off again. Okay, bye now. Right folks, here she is on the bench, cleaned down and ready to strip. So part 1 is take the side plate off, which I'll have to be careful because there may still be oil in it. Because if you look, that's where it's been leaking out of, but this is, of course, it's much like that, so that's much below it, so there's probably oil in it. So I'm going to very carefully take the side plate off, drain the remaining oil out, and see what we shall see. Okay, bring you back in a minute. That's the plate off. There is still oil in it. Also a lot of grit and crap. You have to be careful to hang on to the shims in the gasket, because they set the clearance for the pressure on that. So there you go. So the next thing we do is, well, I'm going to drain the oil out. Ease the rocker shaft out of the steering box housing. That is this. So I'll take that out and then I'll drain the oil out. I'll bring you back when I've done it. Okay, bye now. Right folks, I've come to a decision. After finding that the seal they've sent is the correct seal, but the bushes are too big, I have put the shaft into these bushes, and I've come to the conclusion that there is virtually imperceptible play on them, but the oil seal is ground to blazes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the new oil seal in, but first I'm going to strip this and rebuild it, because it's full of like little lumps of really quite hard grit, and I don't know how they've got in there unless something's come to pieces. You can see those, can't you? But there appears to be very little wear on the steering box. I'm looking for wear in the sort of centre of its travel, and there really isn't any, although these bearings are fairly... that was nasty, turning that like that. There really isn't very much wear on there at all. I'm going to strip it down, wash it out, examine the balls. This top bearing is full of crap. It looks like water's been running down and washing crap now, but we're going to strip it down and I'll bring you back when it's in pieces. Okay, bye now. Well, that's the column off and the column out, and this is where all this hard gritty stuff's come from. It actually looks like it's rust that's worked its way down through the bearings. It's all in the bearing there, look, and it's a right mess. So it's time to clean it out, examine the balls, and see if we need new bearings or see if we can rebuild it as it is. The bearings they do look good, but you can't really tell once you get them. I mean, look at the state of this. This is like just unbelievable. But that's where the corrosion is there. Right, cleaning up again, and I'll get back to you. Bye now. Well, that's where all our gritty bits came from, people. Look at the state of that. Look at the corrosion there. Could be with it being next to aluminium, although it's not that close to aluminium. I don't know what that holds for. I'll have to investigate that in a minute. It could be just because it's, I don't know, hardened steel, toughened steel, or whatever, but by God, that's corroded. But luckily, it's not corroded in anywhere that's important. And this looks to be pretty good, so I've got to clean the rest out now. Examine the ball bearings. I've got one bearing race off. Right, what that's going to be like, I don't know. I'll give that a wipe off and I'll bring you back. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll clean all the bearings out and then I'll bring you back and we'll have a good look at it and see if we can save it. Alright, and bye now. Not the sort of stuff that you want to find in the bottom of your steering box bearings, really, is it? That's just lumps of rust and oil mixed together. Horrible. Right, onward. It's coming clean. Right, folks. Tuesday, 5 o'clock. I've got all the bits of the steering box cleaned up, and as you can see, with steering boxes, it's a load of balls, or if you like, it's a load of recirculating balls. There's the nut. It's got marks on it, but it was made in 1955, so I'm not surprised. Overall, it's in reasonably good condition. I've found that the seal, which is a perfect fit on the shaft, doesn't actually fit in the body of the, let me take that out, doesn't actually fit in the body of the steering box, because this must be an earlier steering box or something. It's different anyway. It's a good fit on the shaft, but it simply doesn't fit into there. This has a rubber ring, which is here. No, it's not, that's not it. I had it a moment ago. No matter anyway, no matter. It has a rubber ring with a piece of steel behind it, steel ring behind it, which is staked into position. Now I have found an identical, it's that outer edge doesn't do anything, it's the inner part that does it. I have found a piece of rubber seal that will fit in there perfectly, fits on the shaft perfectly, and I can just take some of these stakes out, pop that ring back in and stake it up again, which will give it a bit of compression. So that will do it. The one that, let me just see if I can see it. No, I can't see it at the moment, but the one that was on just fell over the shaft, so obviously no good at all. So that will be done tomorrow. I don't know what I've done with that. I must have mislaid it. Have I thrown it on the floor? No, I haven't thrown it on the floor. That's unusual. I usually throw most things on the floor. I've been having fun chasing ball bearings around the floor, but I've found them all. I've also found in my assorted tin of ball bearings, I've also found a huge number of replacements because some of these are quite badly worn. So I've chucked the worn ones and the damaged ones out, and they will be replaced for new ones. Right, that's it for today, folks. That was unbelievably filthy inside. All around the bottom bearing was filled with like rusty chunks of steel off this shaft. Look at that, terrible. But it's all clean now. I'll probably get a coat of red lead before it goes back in. I've got this cleaned as well. Can you see down there? That's nice and clean. Can you see? Yes, you can. That's nice and clean. No wear on this. Very little wear on that. Just spilled the ball bearings again. Luckily, the manual tells you how many there should be in each place, and it also tells you how to get the bloody thing back together. So that'll be our job for tomorrow. Get it back together, get it refitted to the tractor. Okay folks, bye now. Good morning people. I've been to my local bearing shop and I've managed to buy 34 new bearings to rebuild this with. That race is good. The other race for the top is a little bit pitted, but given that it's not a Ferrari, I can live with it. The main thing is quite a lot of the bolts are damaged, so I'm putting all new bolts in it, and we're going to go for that. So what I'm going to do is get set up to put it back together, and then see if I can show you me putting it back together. It's going to be a laugh, is this, because they're quite fiddly to put back together. Alright then, I'll bring you back when I'm ready. Bye now. Okay, folks, the first thing we have to do is to take the nut with the recirculating balls in it. We have to take the nut, we have to pack it with grease, and we have to roll into the grease 14 ball bearings, 3/8 diameter, which is what I've done. And then we have to screw this onto here, and it does say quite clearly in the instructions, it doesn't matter which end of the nut goes on first. So there we are. So that's what I'm going to do now, and I'll bring you back when I've done it. That was easy. So that's on there now. All the balls are in there. There's 14 balls in there. It's all greased up, and we're ready for the next step. So I shall go to the next step now and see what that is. Here's the book of words. Using clean grease and main nut groove to retain the balls in position, feed the 14 balls into the tube and assemble the nut to the steering shaft worm. Enter the shaft through... Note, it is immaterial which end of the main nut is first entered into the worm. Next, insert the lower ball race into the seating inside the box, screw in the plug and sealing washable, that's already in, and locate 10 ball bearings using clean grease to retain them in position. Right, I shall do that. This is the lower one there, right, and this is the lower race. No, that's the upper race. This is the lower race. Right, I should put that in, put 10 bearings in, and we'll go from there. There we are folks, lower seat in place, filled with grease, and 10 bearings placed into there. Right, the next thing I have to do is to get this assembly here, thread it in through there and up there, and then drop the bottom of the worm into those bearings without dislodging any. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'll be back in a moment. Right, so far it's a goodie. It's all in place and it seems to be good. So the next thing to do is to lower this seat down here, and when it's part way down, tilt it, fill it with grease and put 10 bearings in it. And then push it gently into place. So we'll see if we can achieve that. Right, I'll bring you back when I've done it. Right folks, there's no doubt that that's the fiddly bit, but it's not that difficult and I've done it. There are no loose balls on the floor and there are no loose balls inside the box, which I believe there was one in the box. But there we are, we're back together. Make sure that your nut is free to move on there. And then we go to the next stage, which I assume will be shimming. So I'll I'll go read the book and see what happens, and I'll bring you back when I've found out. Next thing we have to do is to set the preload, set the clearance on the bearings here, which means fitting the shaft, fitting all the shims that you took off, fitting the shaft, tightening the nuts down, and then seeing if there's any up and down play on the shaft. Now what it says in the manual is you set it for 0 end float and 0 preload, which is quite demanding but should be doable. So I'm going to offer it up now, tighten the nuts up and see what we've got, and then I can roughly measure the end float if we've got any, and take a shim out by measuring the thickness of the shims and removing a similar shim and then tighten it down. But it does say in the manual 0 end float, 0 preload, so that you don't want them tight, you want them just barely touching the races. Okay, so I'll have a go at that now and see what happens. This corrosion on the shaft here, what I'm going to do with this is wax oil it when I put it back in. In fact, I'm going to wax oil it now, because if I get it right the first time I'm not going to take it out again, just to stop it rusting again. But that corrosion is quite incredible. I wondered, and I looked, and I think I might be right, that this is a piece of tube which is welded there and also welded somewhere up here, possibly there, and that hole is to let the heat out, or let the air, the heated air, escape. Because if you poke a scriber in there like I have done, because I had to, see, you see a hole, you've got to poke something in it, haven't you? And this appears to be a piece of tube. This appears to be bigger inside than it is outside. Knowing Mr. Ford, he would make these in 2 pieces, because he wouldn't want to waste all this tool steel, all this high carbon steel, when it's not necessary. So there you go. Right, I'm going to bash some wax oil on there, and I'm going to put this back on and see how we go. I'll bring you back in a minute. Folks, it's all back on with the original shims, and I've got 0 end float, as you can see, and 0 binding. So we can say safely, I think, that there's no preload and there's no end float. So there we go. Pleased. And a much better rig as well. Right, bring you back in a minute. The next thing to do is fit the what does it call it? I can't remember what they call that shaft. The rocker shaft. Locate the rocker shaft oil seal, which I've already fitted. The rocker shaft oil seal is a strange little rubber ring with a steel backer behind it, which is staked into the into position. Now what I've done here, the seal that was in there was absolutely knackered. So what I did, I got very lucky and found a rubber hydraulic piston seal for a brake caliper, which I think looking at the size was probably a later Mini Cooper one, but I couldn't be sure on that, which was the exact right fit. So I've put that in, I've greased it liberally, and now I'm going to fit the rocker shaft. So that's the next thing to do. Bring you back in a minute. Folks, the next thing we have to do is to, we've fitted this, we put the little roller that goes in the slot in the cover plate onto there, lubed up with a bit of grease, and then we have to fit the shims and the gasket for the side cover, and fit the side cover, making sure that everything lines up and goes in there like that. So off we go, and then we have to of course check the end float on here and shim it to suit, so that I think again it's 0 drag and 0. Removing the cover plate, steering column brush, steering gear. Let's just see if there is a bit of, no there isn't. SE90 oil it wants in it, but that's it. We just have to make sure. Check the rocker shaft end flow is as described on page 174. I'll find it and I'll get back to you. The same as the shaft. You adjust this for zero end float. So if you've got a little bit of end float, if you can push it in and out, then you take shims out. If you haven't got any end float and it's going tight, then you put shims in. Obviously these shims you would have to make. I think what I would do in a case like this, because you're talking, because it's going to be so minimally different to what it was when the whole thing was built at the factory, all you need to do really is put a paper gasket on it. If it's too tight, put a paper gasket on it. If you take one shim out and it's then too tight, put another paper gasket on it. You know, it's really not going to make much difference. Right, I'm going to put this together and check it. I'll bring you back when I'm ready. Bye now. Oh, one thing, when you put the steering column itself on, make sure that you line up the little filler plug there with the holes through the shims, so that you can pour the oil in there and it goes straight in. Right, bring you back in a minute.